The unified source of all potential resides in the Trinity, the One, the universal intellect, and the world soul which emanates from them. The shadows of our external reality are but reflections of our inner emotional state and the ideals we nurture within. The psyche requires emotional nutrition. It must be fed with integrity and truth to project a healthy, vibrant reality.
The essence of existence lies not only in what we observe, but also in the emotional frequency from which we start. There is a state of absolute potentiality, a trinity of origin, where emotion, thought, and form are still an indivisible unity. This notion reveals a fundamental truth. Outer reality is ultimately a projected reflection of our inner ecosystem. The world does not happen to us from the outside in, it emanates from our depth, gaining contours and solidity through the filter of what we feel more constantly. If we understand that matter is, metaphorically, condensed emotion, emotional hygiene assumes the role of a vital discipline, comparable to biological nutrition. Just as the physical body requires pure food to function with vitality, our life experience requires us to be rigorous healers of what we allow to dwell in our heart. Taking care of what we feel is not a mere exercise in psychological well-being, it is the supreme act of sovereignty over existence. Feeding our emotions with clarity, compassion, and truth is to ensure that the reality we project is fertile soil for growth, not a labyrinth of shadows. We will now try to demonstrate in myth, science, and logic that everything is made up of emotions that crystallize.
Eros Zero is the emotion that contains the cosmic egg, with the potential to create everything.
Eros Zero represents consciousness in its purest form, a state of total neutrality and absolute rest. At this point, there is no manifestation of duality yet, so it cannot be numbered as 1. It remains as the zero, the fertile vacuum, the silence before the first heartbeat. It is in this zero that resides all the power of manifestation, the infinite pressure capable of originating the first pulse. Eros Zero is characterized as emotion in peace, so we call it Eros, the pure feeling. A force of attraction and repulsion still in a potential state, an affinity that precedes any encounter. This is the moment when the Trinity remains in absolute latency, symbolizing the cosmic egg where chaos and emotion merge into a single indistinguishable substance. The triune unity of Eros Zero finds an echo in various cultural and philosophical traditions. They manifest themselves as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in Christianity, Osiris, Isis, and Horus in ancient Egypt. The One, the intellect and the soul in Plotinus. The Hindu Trimurti with Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And the theosophical triad composed of Atma, Buddhi and Manas. All of these representations reflect the state of latency and primordial unity of Eros Zero. In science, the concept of Eros Zero finds its most faithful expression in the triad formed by the proton, neutron and electron.
What we call Eros Zero is the zero-point field, a state of absolute coherence where all possibilities exist as one.
These particles represent, in a way, a primordial unity, just like the latent trinity of Eros Zero in mythological and philosophical traditions. Before observation, that is, before the emotion that chooses, all possibilities exist simultaneously.
Observation is the emotional trigger that forces a choice. It collapses absolute coherence into a specific, physical reality.
In this state of absolute coherence, the proton, neutron, and electron are not separate entities, but rather manifestations of a single uncollapsed wave function. The quantum vacuum is not simply nothing, but rather an infinite energy field, replete with zero-point fluctuations.
In quantum superposition, before the observer's choice, the atom exists as a single, uncollapsed wave of infinite potential.
It is in this ocean that pairs of particles and antiparticles emerge, evoking the latent manifestation potential of Eros Zero. In the moment before the Big Bang, we found the initial singularity, a point of infinite density where all the fundamental forces of physics were unified into a single symmetrical superforce.
The quantum vacuum is not nothingness. It is an ocean of infinite energy where pairs of particles emerge and vanish in a constant dance of potential.
All the pieces of the puzzle were fitted together so that they formed a single smooth and indivisible piece, reflecting the Trinity at rest, power, form and connection in a single static embrace. Zero does not represent the absence of value, but rather the presence of all values in equilibrium. In the sacred holographic universe, Eros Zero manifests as love in equanimity, synthesizing all possibilities at a point of perfect neutrality.
I love you all.
We love you too, sweetheart.
The order of the universe is not a coincidence, but the manifestation of conscious emotional laws that guarantee the cohesion of being.
Each Titan is born when emotion, imagination, and information make room for an unprecedented function.
Mathematics is the body. Emotion is the soul that gives it the impulse to start counting.
The order of the universe is not accidental, but the manifestation of conscious emotional laws that guarantee the cohesion of being. Inspired by the idea of universal harmony, this conception guides the understanding that everything that exists is governed by principles that unite emotion and consciousness, forming the basis of manifested reality.
Densification of energy is the genesis of anguish and isolation, while its sublimation is the path to peace and universal harmony. Between the abyss of fear and the clarity of spirit, all realities are possible. It is up to emotion to collapse the light or the shadow.
The key to improvement lies in not viewing these forces as separate entities, but as different manifestations of a single universal law that science is still trying to fully decipher.
Remember, SHU is not a place of dogmatic answers, but a living center for research and discovery.
A full understanding of reality implies perceiving that consciousness, matter, and energy are expressions of the same primordial essence in different emotional states. Gaia represents the state of dense energy, matter, and unconscious consciousness. From chaos, through affinity and heat, the dense vibration condensed, the earth that takes shape. She is the embodiment of information animated by the emotion of generating life, soil that retains water, memory, and rhythm. She guards the first stable forms, the first recesses where life can ignite. Gaia feels deeply. Her emotion is the fertility that generates continuity. In myth, she is mother and matrix. Her veins are rivers of light. Her pulse is cyclical. She welcomes the Titans and gives them ground to build their functions.
What the ancients called the seeds of Uranus, we now recognize as quantum superposition and bioelectromagnetism.
Uranus represents the subtle energy state, expansion and conscious awareness. The subtle vibration, the heaven that inspires. It is the ascending principle, the field that expands, that creates space and perspective. Its emotion is the wonder that opens horizons. Its function is to tension Gaia, generate distance and allow breath. Uranus is wind, light and expanding order. In the narrative, Uranus is the starry dome that breathes over Gaia, aligning particles and constellations and inviting life to look beyond itself.
I have never seen anything like this.
It is beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
If emotion is the engine, reality is the result of applying that energy to our consciousness.
In the beginning, Earth, Gaia, and Sky, Uranus, existed in perfect union, forming a single living and conscious body. This primordial state was marked by eternal passion and pure love, where rock and gas breathed in harmony, without distinction between matter and spirit. The creative impulse emerged in this undifferentiated embrace, causing Gaia, pregnant with the fruits of this love, to need space to give rise to life. Thus begins the Great Cleavage, an essential separation between Earth and Sky, creating the interval where life could sprout. Uranus, assuming the role of altruistic and solitary father, withdraws to observe the growth of his children, influencing them with the mystery of silence and the wisdom of the stars. From this original separation, a rhythm and a gradual distance emerge that allow the appearance of the children, the many, as harmonics that break the cosmic silence. Among them stand out the 12 Titans, responsible for weaving the fundamental structure and preparing the vibrational stage of existence. One by one, the Titans take their places, organizing the atmosphere, light, and nourishment necessary for life. Each Titan is born when a new layer of reality becomes possible, resulting from the opening provided by emotion, imagination, and information. In the universal harmonious system, the order of the Titans does not follow a mythical genealogy, but rather a structural and scientific logic. Each Titan represents a sequential step in the evolution and complexification of the cosmos, symbolizing a new competence in the web of the universe and a new level of consciousness. The sages of antiquity knew that energy was consciousness in different states. That is why for each manifestation was given a name, a personification, and a corresponding image. Titans as primal energies with little control and aggressiveness were portrayed as rough-looking giants. The 12 Titans. The analogies and science.
Oceanus was the primordial vapor that allowed information to flow.
When Gaia was still burning and Uranus covered her like an opaque mantle, Oceanus rose from the steam that enveloped the planet, allowing the passage of information. Primordial flow, Pisces sign.
If I modulate the flow here, the resonance pattern changes significantly.
The Tethys wing demonstrates how the global water cycle is inextricably linked to our own circulatory health.
When the steam began to fall into unseen rivers, Tethys emerged as a liquid goddess. She was the one who guided the water. She taught the planet to breathe in cycles. Vital circulation, Cancer.
The nitrogen cycle appears stable, but look at the spike in the carbon data here.
Yes, the atmospheric exchange rate is accelerating.
From the encounter between steam and light, Hyperion opened his eyes. The primordial radiation, the ancestral photon that made the cosmos visible. Astral light, Leo.
What the ancients called the fire of Hyperion, we now recognize as biophotons, the ultra-weak light emissions that cells use to communicate and organize.
When the light found direction, Theia emerged. It was the science of perception being born, the primordial perspective. Theia, vision and transparency, Gemini.
What Theia pioneered as primal transparency, we now replicate as light-manipulating metamaterials.
As the sky rose and the earth stabilized, heavens raised the invisible column, Céus, that separates the high from the low. The gravitational structure, the backbone of the space, celestial axis, Capricorn.
The axis of Céus is what we now study as geomagnetism and angular momentum, the invisible forces that keep our planet stable and oriented in the void.
When the light found meaning, Phoebe descended like a luminous arrow. It was the intelligence of complex systems, the emerging forecast. Phoebe, prophecy and intuition, Sagittarius.
What the myth calls the prophecy of Phoebe, we now investigate as quantum non-locality and predictive coding, the brain's ability to sense patterns.
With the sky structured and the light oriented, Céus raised his arm and set the first rhythm, dividing time into cycles. The astronomical periodicity, the metronome of the cosmos. Zodiacal rhythm, Aries.
What the myth calls Koios zodiac is what we now study as chronobiology and celestial mechanics.
When the rhythm threatened to become chaos, Themis landed between heaven and earth like a living scale. The symmetry, the law of conservation, dynamic equilibrium, universal order, Libra.
What Themis represents is the symmetry of the universe, the fundamental constants that keep reality from dissolving into entropy.
From the depths of the earth and the silence of heaven, Mnemosyne rose, guarding every vibration, the file, the memory, the persistence of patterns. Mnemosyne, cosmic memory, Scorpio.
What Mnemosyne represents is information persistence, the way our DNA remembers the environment of our ancestors and our ancestors.
I am.
When memory became a mirror, Iapetus stood up as the first, I. The emergence of self-awareness, the system that refers to itself. The primordial subject, Aries, second expression.
What Geppetto represents is the executive function and self-awareness, the biological hardware that allows us to distinguish self from other.
With the I awake, Rhea reached out and shaped the matter. Morphogenesis, biology being born, the first sensory manifestation. Taurus sign.
What Rhea represents is the self-assembly of life, the precise moment when organic molecules organize themselves into a boundary that we call a cell.
Behold Kronos, born of Gaia and Uranus.
When heaven and earth were completely separated, Kronos wielded the blade of time and severed the last link between them, freeing Uranus and establishing space-time. Entropy, irreversibility and the beginning of history. Time and separation, Virgo.
What Kronos represents is the thermodynamic arrow of time, the fundamental law that energy only flows in one direction.
From this new scenario, the primordial energy slows down and transforms into matter, giving rise to the physical universe and the beginning of the mineral kingdom.
We are clear of the entrance now.
Keep it steady, angling towards pedestal 4.